dialogue. So you're all going to be wrestling with multicultural education as a human right, understanding it. And we actually have the author of the article that many of you have read, and if you haven't read, we have copies so that everyone can have a copy. Dean Francisco Rios. We also have a guest coming, Dr. Dade, who also is a leader in the field of multicultural education, as well as Dean Rios. So we're gonna jump in just a few minutes, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about what this particular evening is about. But before we get started, we have another special guest, Ms. Shepherd, who has an announcement.
So thank you for giving me a couple of seconds for an announcement. Tomorrow is the opening of our mentoring symposium on campus. It's our first mentoring symposium where we're bringing people from all over the state in to talk about mentoring, and we invite all of you. You are welcome to the breakout sessions, and the mentoring symposium is actually a paid symposium. It costs $100 to come, but we're opening it up to Woodring students. So the breakout sessions are from 1 to 3. There are 2 of them, and if you are interested, there's a sign up on my door. Choose which one you want to come to, put your name down there, and the rooms are there. We invite you. They should be wonderful. Lots of wonderful presenters coming tomorrow that are on Friday. The breakouts are on Friday, and we encourage you to come and join us. We'd love to have you there. Okay, thanks.
And for those of you who are in my class, you know you get intrinsic motivation points for attending really fabulous events on campus. How many of you were at Michelle Alexander's on Thursday? Yes. Awesome. Yeah, and she's beautiful. Sickening. Okay, so let's get back to tonight, because we have our fantastic Dean Rios with us. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of a message of how we got here and what this particular evening is for. So I get to read this. So the term multicultural education is commonplace in our schools, as you know, universities and classrooms. But what's often missing is a shared vision or an embodiment of multicultural educational beliefs and practices. In review of the literature, James Banks found that most multicultural theorists, scholars, and researchers have a high level of consensus about the aims and scope of multicultural education. However, there's a tremendous gap between theory and practice in the field. So tonight really is in an effort to bridge the gaps. So CEED in the past has hosted 3 annual multicultural education in the 21st century symposia, and for the past 3 years we've had cohorts. The multicultural staff and faculty fellows in Woodring wrestling with what does multicultural education mean, and how do we actually deeply embody praxis, which is knowledge, reflection, and action. For those of you who are in here, you know that. And we actually have a multicultural staff and faculty fellow here tonight. So this is a means for us to develop or to cultivate our critical consciousness around issues of educational equity and social justice. So during the summer of 2012, Dean Rios was one of our keynote speakers for our multicultural education of the 21st century. And this particular conference was around the theme of educational equity and organizational change. So how do we move? We had an event called Moving Beyond the Rhetoric. So we were actually like, let's actually do that. Let's physically move beyond the rhetoric. Let's work in teams. Let's wrestle with issues, and let's do some planning for policy and practice changes. So Dean Rios was one of our keynote speakers, and he was phenomenal. He shared his article, and he shared a wonderful keynote around multicultural education as a human right. And it really began CEED's, CEED was also a group who was at the conference, so we began wrestling with how do we actually embody this? So we decided that we would have multicultural education as a human right as our theme for the year. And as most of you have read, you know, this is not a new idea, it just hasn't been articulated the way that Dean Rios has done so. In the past, Nieto and Bodhi have stated that because each cultural group has developed a different context, we can never reach total agreement on the best and most appropriate ways in which to lead our lives. One way to tackle this dilemma is to emphasize the indisputable human and civil rights of all people. These rights guarantee that all human beings are treated with dignity, respect, and equality. Again, for those of you who were at Michelle Alexander's event on Thursday, how did she end her talk? What did she say we needed to do?
Focus on it as a human rights issue?
Yes, we need to have a human rights movement. So how do we do that? How do we create a human rights movement? Well, Dean Rios addresses this, the hopeful possibilities of engaging with multicultural education as a framework for human and civil rights by creating a foundation that is grounded in a humanizing pedagogy, honoring decolonizing perspectives and action, while moving toward critical consciousness. Now, in this article, he didn't dismiss the challenges of eliminating the achievement gap or about the demographic imperatives. Rather than focusing on deficit perspectives, Dean Rios has a vision of multicultural education that provides an alternative conception about diversity in education. He suggests that we value and frame multicultural education as a human right, as the right to learn about oneself, to learn about others, and to learn citizenship skills associated with a deep democracy in a global age. So, in honoring Dean Rios's productive principles consistent with multicultural education in this article, we're going to wrestle with what is multicultural education? How do we define this? And there's multiple definitions. So we're going to get small groups of folks looking at two different definitions, Dr. Sonia Nieto's definition of multicultural education and Dr. James Banks. These are kind of the mothers and fathers of multicultural ed. And we're going to have another group who's going to be looking specifically at the document that Dean Rios uses in his text, which is UNESCO's Universal Declaration on Cultural Diversity. So how do human rights or how does cultural diversity affect the way that we think of multicultural ed as a human right? And then three groups of you are going to be looking at the, as we call them, the productive principles of multicultural education from Dean Rios's article. And these are the psychocultural rights, the sociocultural rights, and the cultural demographic rights. So we're going to take probably about 20 minutes to wrestle with that in small groups, and then you're going to come back and share out what you've gathered. So I've got a little think sheet here for you. And the beauty of tonight is that we're just going to wrestle with this together, and we've got Dean Rios here to help us when we have questions. And I want you, as you're going through this, to really come up with questions that you really want answered. Where are the gaps for you? And Dean Rios doesn't necessarily have the answers, but he will certainly provide, his expertise, but also probably ask you some really good questions back. Okay, so does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Awesome. Anyone particularly fond of multicultural ed that wants to lead that group? I know we all are, right? Or should I just assign you? Should I be the decider? I like it. I'm trying not to be the decider. Okay, so I'm going to, Lisa, if you could, just take one and pass it on. So here's your think sheet. So I'm going to start with this group over here, just maybe a group of, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we've got 5 groups, so we're going to make one group over here of folks that are going to look specifically at the definitions of multicultural education. So you get to look at these together, and you've got about 20 minutes to come up with kind of a synthesis of what you have found about what multicultural education is. And they give you a poster and some markers. Okay, then this group right here, you're going to be examining UNESCO Declaration of Cultural Diversity. And okay, right here,
That's good.
You all are going to be looking at the psychocultural human rights, or rights. And, oops, you might have to share some of those. Okay, this right here, you all are going to be looking at, hold on. You are looking at this sociocultural, and this group here, you are the cultural. Yes, right here. Okay.
Oh no, we never cut you off.
Okay, you've got 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I think Dean Rios will probably come around if you have any questions. So if you really are wrestling, just raise your hand. We'll come around. You have, each of you are going to get a poster and some markers to just kind of give us a little overview of what you found out about your particular area that you're looking at. Okay, jump on in.